All right, next up, we've got the third and final conference championship game for Friday night, and this is a big one. This has college football playoff implications. This is essentially a ticket to the college football playoff, this game. Whoever wins is going to be in as Mountain West champion, as a group of five at-large bid, if you will. The UNLV Rebels taking on the Boise State Broncos. We've got Boise State 4-point favorites, 58.5 being the total. This is now all three games here, Army gets to host on their home field. The last game we talked about, it's a home game for Jacksonville State in the Conference USA title game. This is a home game for Boise State. This will be on the blue turf of Albertson Stadium in Boise, Idaho. So it is a home game for Boise. That certainly gives them a nice advantage for sure going into this game. No question about that. But will it be enough? Because if you look at this Boise team, and obviously this is a rematch, we've now seen UNLV and Boise State play each other twice the last couple of years, and it's been Boise both times winning and covering 44-20 in this Mountain West championship game last year when it was at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. It was all Boise, 527 to 298 edge in total yards for the Broncos in that game. And then we saw them play, obviously, this past regular season back in October, also in Las Vegas, 29-24 it was in favor of Boise State, a pretty close game. And if you actually look at the yardage figures, like I said, it was very even. It was 394 total yards for Boise State in that game, and it was about 300 and into the 60s, 367 for UNLV in that game. It was a pretty even game both ways, and Boise emerges with the 5-point win. I remember how, UNLV was trying to get the ball back late in the game, fourth quarter, and Boise and it was the Ashton Genty show. He just first down after first down, bleeding the clock. I don't believe Barry Odom had many, if any, timeouts left either. He burned them all earlier in the second half, and they just couldn't get a stop against Genty in the ground game, and they basically just ran out the clock on that final drive, and Boise was able to put it away with that 29-24 win back in October. But it was a competitive game, and in fact, UNLV had a strong first quarter, up 10-3 in that game. Boise had a 20-10 lead at halftime, but then there's UNLV battling back. They actually took a lead after the third quarter, and then Boise got the only score in the fourth quarter with an Ashton Genty 1-yard touchdown run. And then, like I said, they were able to run the clock out the rest of the way. This is a really tricky game for me because situationally, I think there's reasons to like the Rebels here and UNLV plus the points. They've now lost to Boise 2 in a row. But the last game with Boise, they made big strides. They weren't blown out like they were in the Mountain West title game last year with that 5-point loss. We've talked all year how great, not just good, how great UNLV's been in 2 years as an underdog under Barry Odom. They've been absolutely phenomenal. You look at this year alone as an underdog, winning outright at Houston, winning outright at Kansas. The Boise game was a narrow point spread defeat by 1 point because they were catching 4. They lost by 5. So they've been still excellent in this role. They've now lost twice to Boise the last 2 years, last year in the conference title game, and this year, of course, earlier in the regular season. If you start to look at Boise, all of a sudden, none of these games have been easy for them lately. The Nevada game at home on this blue turf, a Nevada team that just got pulverized by UNLV, Boise beat them by 7, and it was a struggle. Didn't even come close to covering the number either in that football game did Boise State. The San Jose State game was one of the most fraudulent, non-deserving covers you'll ever see out of Boise State. 42-21 when it was a 14-0 fourth quarter, including a pick six that gave Boise State the point spread cover in that victory over the Spartans. So that was a game that was up for grabs for a period of time. The Wyoming game on the road was 17-13. They escaped for dear life. And then against Oregon State, in that game last week, they had a comfortable 24-7 lead at one time, but there were portions of that game it looked like Oregon State was going to dig their way back into it, and they still gave up 342 total yards of offense in that game. The passing game was solid for Oregon State as well. I just don't feel Boise State's played as well the last month as they played maybe earlier in the season. So I'm kind of interested in UNLV plus these points here on the blue turf. Not an easy environment. That's big that Boise gets to host this game, but I like what I'm seeing from UNLV. They're in their best point spread role, and that's catching points, not laying them. I'm interested here, at least, in UNLV +4. It's going to be interesting to see, can Ricky White make plays? And that's going to be the critical matchup right there.
They're going to double him. They did that in the first game. He only had 5 for 57. They got to try to get him the rock a little bit more. Yeah, for sure.
And there's got to be other receivers stepping up too for Haj Malik Williams in this passing game, because if the pass rush of Boise does not get home, and that's the critical matchup, UNLV's offensive line, can they hang in there? Can they hold up? Because they are a great pass rush team, Boise. But if you can protect your quarterback, Haj Malik Williams, against Boise's front, you're going to make plays down the field. That's not a great secondary they have. So if Ricky White gets doubled, can Kaleo Balunge step up? Can Jaden Thomas step up? Can Jacob DeJesus step up? You're going to need these other receivers that UNLV has to be able to make some plays if they bracket Ricky White down the field in coverage. And again, that's number one. They got to have other receivers make plays. And number two, that O-line's got to block and protect for Williams. Because if they do, that's not a great secondary. I've seen it over and over again with Boise. You can throw on that team. Any team that's got a good pass protection and has good receivers and weapons and a quarterback that can chuck the ball vertically, that's where you can have success against Boise, and that's a critical element to this game, matchup-wise. C-Mac, what do you think? Mountain West Championship.
Yeah, I think UNLV, they'd rather run it, though, still. Williams pretty good, but, I mean, they still only throw, average 180 yards, 117. But that's been a problem for Boise, the secondary. They gave up 260. At 119 in the country. It's been a problem for them, but they did well against White, like we talked about in the first game. So that first game, just 5-6 weeks ago, Boise was favored by 4 here. Now they're just 4-point favorites at home. And one thing, can UNLV? I talked about it last year. They did it again, Bavano. Top 5 turnover margin. And a defense that's been pesky, bend but don't break. The run defense has been excellent for them, too. I mean, this team's almost top 10 in the country against the run. Genty had his worst game, 128, 33 carries, 128. He gritted it out, though. He had a few big plays and big runs. And he really, I'd say this because he had 127 against Portland State in the first game, but he was out by halftime in that game. He didn't have 33 carries. So can UNLV put some heat on it? This has been, David versus Goliath here. UNLV just hasn't been able to get past them. As Odom's turned this program around, it would be huge. And I think this would be a lot better if UNLV was at home, like in this game. It's just going to be tough to go to the old Albertsons, the Smurf turf, and hang around. But Boise State, like you've talked about, nothing's been impressive. And of course, they're probably going through the motions a little bit to get to this. But if there's an upset, they're out. They're out of the 12. This would be a big upset here for UNLV. Boise will not be in there anymore in the 12 teams. So I think they could have success. For someone that have seen it, I think they got closer with this game that they just played. But I'm going to think about this one a little bit more. I just think in the end, Boise probably will make the plays and win this. And is this enough points with UNLV? I'm not so sure to back them. I think Boise could still win. You know what? They both want to run it well. I'd slightly lean under at this number. 60s, it's a no-go. And that first game was at 60, right?
Yeah.
62 maybe?
Yeah.
What was it at? 63,
yeah.
Basically. Okay. I think it's a little lower. Big thing. I mean, right around here, I think there's going to be enough points that it could creep over. I got to look at it a little bit more. So great game, though. This is one of my favorites out of all these games now.
Rightfully so. I mean, this is great. It's great too. You don't get Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt calling UNLV Boise State very often. They will be on the call for this. This is the only Fox game this weekend in conference championships, and it's Gus and Joel time. So there you go. They'll be there for UNLV and Boise State Friday night. So that'll be cool having them on the call. By the way, Gus Johnson lost his shit when Davis Warren threw that interception It didn't. Now Michigan still won the game, but that listening to Gus's call when Davis Warren threw that goal line interception, stop that! Just his voice is going all over the place, haywire. Funny stuff there. All right, that's a great game though. Totals wise, I kind of feel too it's a little high. I do. 58. And remember, it was 53 points the last game. And look, you're going to get a lot of running from both teams. I think what's good for UNLV too is they didn't run all over Boise in the loss to Boise State in Vegas 2 months ago, but they did run for 188 rushing yards on 42. That's not bad. They didn't get completely bottled up because Boise's strength is stopping the run. It's against the pass where they're weaker, but they did an all right job running the ball. And again, Haj Malik, his ability
that game
plays, yeah.
That game though, a lot of field goals.
Yes.
Okay. There was like 6 field goals in there.
Not
So that's always big on the total here. Yeah. Touchdowns to 6 field goals you got, I believe, in that first matchup.
Yeah. I'm not bullish on the over in this game. Let's put it that way.